Now, Sports Talk with Broads. Here's Hunter Brody.
What is going on, everybody? I've been sitting on this topic for about a week or so now because, believe it or not, news has been popping up, whether it's the MLB going back and forth between the players' union and the owners, the NHL, the NBA. I mean, all these possible returns kept coming out, so I actually had something to stay on top of. But I finally got an opportunity to sit here and get into what I really want to get into. This topic pissed me off and fired me up when I was preparing it about a week or so ago, and I know as soon as I start talking about it again, my blood will boil. I will be absolutely disgusted with some people, and I can't wait to express my feelings. So essentially what happened was, I put out a tweet about the 76ers, and I got a response, and I'm paraphrasing, but it was essentially, who cares? I want them to lose first round so Brett Brown can get canned. And I can't believe it. And there are a lot of people that feel that way because there's this narrative that a new head coach equals an NBA title, and that's not the case. You know what the case is? Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid taking big steps in their career equals an NBA title. It's on them. And once again, it's on them. And I love this comparison that Mike Gill put out there on 97.3 ESPN when I brought this conversation up because it happened before our show started from 2 to 6 p.m. And I'm like, Gill, I got to bring this up. I mean, my blood was boiling that people felt this way. So we were kind of talking about it a little bit on the air. And he said, when you look at the sport of basketball and you look at how it's coached from the very beginning, when you're playing, I mean, in hockey, it's called mites. I don't even know what it's called when you're 5 years old playing basketball, but your township ball. The coach matters. In middle school and high school, the coach matters. In AAU ball, the coach matters. Although you're starting to see a bunch of talent come together and be super teams in AAU, but because of where the players are age-wise, the coach matters. In college, the coach matters because it's a different structure. The organizations are different. And once again, the age of these players. They look up at that coach as a different type of figure. When you get to the NBA, all of that changes. But because we watch college, because we watch these kids grow up and play, and you watch your own kids, and you watch community ball when you take your kids and you see it, you just assume, well, that's how it is. But at the next level, the professional level, it is not that way. And how is it different from the process? Well, it's simple. The process, you had no talent. You were trying to get out of being the 8th seed, out of the 9th seed. You were stuck at 500 basketball. How do you possibly escape that? Well, you lose on purpose to get high draft picks to change your future. That's a totally different version of losing on purpose. Here, you have a team that's competitive. You have a team that's going to win over 50 games. You have a team that needs to learn and grow through pain in the playoffs. See, I find this comical. People are obsessed with Michael Jordan. He would lose to the Pistons, lose to the Pistons, lose to the Pistons, and get better each summer. People love that. I mean, it's just fantastic. Look at that work ethic. Do you think the Chicago Bulls fans was thinking the same thing before they realized what the outcome was? Probably not, because at that time they didn't know Michael Jordan would become Michael Jordan. But you appreciate that process. You understand completely the growing pains that Michael Jordan went through. All of that mattered. All of that was so big in his journey to become who he was. And I'm not saying that Ben Simmons or Joel Embiid is going to touch Michael Jordan's legacy, because guess what? I'll tell you something for free. They're not. But there is something to be said about those growing pains. And I'm not going to hold my players back and wish that they lose in the first round, because then they get nothing out of this season. You need them to gain a tough loss. If they're going to go down, if they're going to lose in the second round again, they need to learn from it. They have to grab it. Now, whether they do that or not in the offseason, that's on them. But to give them the opportunity to do it, well, that's all you can ask for. That heartbreak against the Toronto Raptors in Game 7. That's a perfect example. Did Joel Embiid come out on fire the next year like we thought he would when he was crying in the tunnel? I'm going to say no. Did he have the opportunity to, based off of an emotional loss where he was clearly devastated? I'm going to say yes. And it's all about having the opportunity to. They need to learn from this. So I don't want to take that away from them so the coach can get canned. When this team is ready to win, like legitimately win, when we talk about the Sixers like we do the Bucks and the Lakers and possibly the Clippers, although they had a little bit of a, I would say, underwhelming year for all the hype that they were getting going into the season. When we are talking about the Sixers to that level, it's not going to be because of the coach. It's going to be because of Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid. And then all the Brett Brown haters claim, well, they are playing the way that they are playing because of Brett Brown. And once again, that's just not true. They are playing the way that they are playing because of them. Because of them. NBA basketball is completely different from any other level. And people fail to see that. Now, before we dive more in, this episode of Sports Talk with Broads is sponsored by Orbit Energy and Power. They set the standard for clean energy. Whether you are looking to add solar to your home or company, Orbit works directly with you to ensure that you are getting the best deal. That's not all. They also provide water purification systems, backup energy services, battery storage, and more. So visit them online at orbitenergy.us or give them a call at 800-836-3987. So essentially what I did was I put out a poll on a couple different platforms, and I gave people two options. You either want the Sixers to lose early on purpose so Brett Brown can get fired, or the Sixers compete. They have a chance. They give you everything they got. And you don't know what's going to happen with Brett. It's up in the air. And it's easy to me that it's option number 2. When would Brett Brown's... How far does he have to go to keep him? When is he safe? And I would say an Eastern Conference Finals run. Now this year, it's so different. I get it. There's so much in play. It's such a weird year to have to actually come up with some sort of game plan at the end of the season. You're going to have to see how it plays out. Context is going to have to matter, no doubt about it. But I'm talking about if Brett Brown gets to the Eastern Conference Finals, that is development every year. Every year in the playoffs. He would be developing just like Ben Simmons, just like Joel Embiid, just like Josh Richardson, just like any player. You don't just go from process to championship. You're going to have to go from process. Hell, they skipped the first round exit part, right? They went from process to, okay, we're winning 28 games, so at least we're winning some sort of games instead of 9, 10, 11. You go from a no playoff run to a second round loss to the Celtics. Okay, and it was ugly. And then I thought Brett coached his ass off in a 7-game series against the Toronto Raptors where you're losing Game 7 on the road with a very emotional loss. Okay, if he gets to the Eastern Conference Finals the next year, that is showing growth. People are not patient. It takes time. It took Michael Jordan time. It took LeBron James time. It took these athletes time. And then you get the people who don't really use context. Well, Kawhi Leonard won when he was young. Yeah, with Hall of Famers with him. You can't use that. With Parker, Ginobili, Duncan, ready to rock and roll in their legitimate prime? Yeah, okay. Come on. It might have even been towards a little bit more of their back end of their prime, but they were just that dominant. You get my point, though. Sure, there are stars that win when they're 22, 23, but they are not the ones leading the team, the superstar. That's not how it works. So I want to get into a little bit of the negative responses and the positive responses. But I just want to talk about how, this relates to Gabe Kapler. Because I despised Gabe Kapler. I think everybody who follows me knows that I could not understand why the Phillies went in that direction or how he was the way that he was. With that being said, I wanted the Phillies to win baseball games. I was rooting for the Phillies to win games. I want them to succeed. I can take personality and winning away from each other. I couldn't stand Gabe Kapler's personality, but if it was winning baseball games, if his culture was winning games, then by all means, I'm here to support it. If it came to the Phillies winning, but Gabe Kapler was their manager, or you don't know what you're going to get out of the Phillies, but Gabe Kapler was gone, it's simple. I would want them to win. And it seems as if people hate Brett so much that they would rather lose to get rid of him. They need to be right. They've hated Brett Brown forever now. So to be right, they'd rather that happen. They'd rather the Sixers lose so they can be right. Instead of them being wrong, Brett and the Sixers succeeding, because then they would look stupid. Then they would look dumb. And God forbid they were wrong about a sports take. Let's be real. Okay, in the nature of this business, the nature of being a sports fan in general, sometimes you're wrong about things. God forbid you're wrong, and that relates to or that results in the team that you love being good. It's just a silly, silly way to think, in my opinion. So here's some of the negatives. I'll choose the Knicks if Brett Clown is the coach of this team next season, regardless of what happens. See, to me, that's just someone who is getting on the keyboard, freaking out, getting all crazy, right? And lacks basketball knowledge, right? You go with the Brett Clown and things like that. That's how I know it's just, you have no respect whatsoever. See, I'm okay if you don't like Brett Brown. You're allowed to not like Brett Brown. But I think the way to describe it would be, listen, I think he had a decent time here. I thought he had a role when it came to growing these players when they were young. I think that there's something to be said about the way that his culture is. I don't know if he's strict enough, but maybe it's just time for something new. I'm not saying he's a horrendous coach, but maybe it's time for something new, a change of pace, a new voice. But, he's not Brett Clown. All right, if you gave me that type of description on how you feel, that's fine. I can accept that, right? You don't need to love Brett and get him tattooed on your neck. I just think he gets so disrespected that's when I step in and go, whoa, hold on a second. Is he the best ever? No. And let's be real. He was on Greg Popovich's tree. Whenever people talk about the alternative, what type of coaches are out there, they always mention, well, why can't you go find the next Greg Popovich? What about Doc Rivers? What about coaches like that down in Miami? How come you can't find the next Spoelstra? If Brett Brown was that bad of a coach, do you think that Greg Popovich would have kept him within the organization for so long? If Brett Brown got fired, I think he'd be hired pretty damn quickly. This was another discussion Gil and I had. Would he be picked up like that? And yeah, I think so. With that resume, you don't package all the wins and losses together because it counts the 8, 9, 10 wins that they did on purpose. Those type of seasons. When they lost consistently to get high draft picks. But when it was time to win, when it was time to say, all right, let's turn the page and let's get going, they had the 128-win season and bang, 50-plus, 50-plus, on pace for another 50-plus. Talent matters. But with that resume, with that background, working with Greg Popovich as well, I think he'd be hired without a doubt. I really do. But getting back to some of these negative responses towards Brett. Why is competitive the benchmark? This team spent money to be dominant. Anything less than a trip to the finals, and Brett has to go. there's a decent argument that if a better candidate comes along, Brett has to go, even if they do make the finals. It's been 7 years. I've seen enough. See, the one thing that you fail to mention is, where was Ben Simmons 6 years ago, 5 years ago? That's not fair. You can't use that against him as if that was the time to win. Look, I've been open about this for a long time now. And when I say a long time, in this season, actually. It's been a long time in this season when I saw things that didn't flow properly because you can't deny it. Things were not pretty this year. I would be okay with moving on from Brett Brown. I would be. I think that it's okay to have a shakeup. But I can still defend him because I think people are so ridiculous one way that I got to support him and show him some love because he gets so disrespected by some that it's unfair. They're not being logical with some of their points. They're just emotional and upset that the team looks a little sloppy, that their stars didn't take the next step, which is on them. And people really do not see that. And it's crazy to me because they relate professional basketball in the NBA to what AAU is and the local township basketball and high school basketball when it's not even close to the same thing. Because you got guys making $30 million a year and you got your head coaches making what? Who's going to listen to who? Stars win. Stars matter, and that's how you get it done. And what the players do in the offseason and how they prepare themselves and how they're willing to work and their determination, their focus level, it's on them. In pro sports, it's about putting together a game plan. That's what you do in pro sports as a coach. Game plan, film, things like that. The execution part, hey, you put your hands up and it's on them because that's all you can control. What else do we have here? Get Brett the hell out of here. Without losing to the Celtics, I want to lose early. So this guy wants to lose early so Brett can be canned, but not against the Celtics, which is funny. And it does seem like the Sixers and the Celtics are going head-to-head every single way possible that the NBA lays out some sort of format. It looks like the Sixers and Celtics are going to be going up against each other. They lose and get a new coach. One that will make Ben shoot. Oh, that's a great one. There is a funny little scenario going around Twitter, though. Imagine if, because there's no fans, because it's sort of like playing in an empty gym, which it is playing in an empty gym, what if Ben Simmons just starts drilling threes in these playoff games when the NBA returns? Because, look, there's nothing to be scared about. There's nothing to be worried about. There's nobody in the building. There might be a couple family members or whatnot, but if he has that feel where nothing is there's nobody to criticize him, and he just starts letting it fly because he feels comfortable. Could you imagine? Now, obviously, I don't think that's going to happen. But you know Twitter. You know how it can get. It's funny to think about, oh, well, what if? Just what if? Even if it's a 0.03% chance, what if you see Ben Simmons doing that? Option of Brett being canned, obviously. Did you hear what Jimmy said about the bum? No leadership. See, this is great. Jimmy said Brett had no leadership. Therefore, Brett has no leadership. J.J. Redick goes on the Athletics podcast and says that he is very detailed. Everything he does is great. He's a great leader. That doesn't mean anything. That means nothing. So Jimmy says something, it matters, and everything he said is true. J.J. Redick says something, oh, he's just making it up, he's friends with Brett. That's not reality. Oh, well, you can't have it both ways, dude. Now, if I say what makes Jimmy right, you can say, well, what makes J.J. Redick right? And that's fair. But my point is, you can't just say, well, this person said it, which means it's true, and then throw away what somebody else said. Because your logic tells me what an NBA player who played under Brett Brown says is true. Well, if that's the case, I don't like this insane support for Jimmy. I love Jimmy, but when it comes to the support of what he says, I can't believe that people take it for what it is. And here's the reason why. Because as I stated, people don't like to be wrong. They don't want to look dumb. And Jimmy supports the people that don't like Brett. So if it supports their thought, well, they are going to bring that up way more. But once again, it's funny how people value what Jimmy says when Jimmy hasn't won a damn thing. Jimmy hasn't won a damn thing. So why what he says means the world? If LeBron says it, if Kevin Durant says it, if Michael Jordan says it, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, winners say things, I think it holds more. Jimmy Butler, a dude who's been bounced around a bit. Once again, I love Jimmy. I would want him here. I love the alpha mentality. Could he win somewhere? Sure. I don't think he'd be the superstar. He'd be more of a 2 guy, a 3 guy in the NBA these days where you need 3 stars. But this year, you can get away with him being a 2 because the league has some parity and there's only 2 stars everywhere. I don't think he could be the number 1 dude, but I think he could win something in this league if surrounded properly. But to this point, he hasn't won a damn thing. How about some positives? I dislike Brett Brown, but I would keep him if we went on a nice run through the playoffs, at least the conference finals. So there you go. There's a respectful answer that I could admire, that I could appreciate. I don't like Brett, but if he gets to the conference finals, he should stay here. And I think that that is a very fair assessment because you can see development. Because he would then go from losing in the second round of the Celtics, losing in Game 7 on the road to Kawhi Leonard and the Raptors, getting to the conference finals. It takes time. You got to grow. You got to bloom, blossom. And he's going to have to do that with his stars. It all goes to Ben and Joel. If Brett Brown develops into this great lethal head coach and Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid are in the same spot that they are now, guess what? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You could have the best head coach ever, and Ben and Joel would be in the spot that they are in right now, and it wouldn't matter. Because that coach isn't going to help when Ben Simmons can't get by LeBron, or when Joel Embiid struggles against Marc Gasol. That's just how it works. The choice is pretty clear to me. I'd rather win and have a successful outcome regardless of who's at the helm, rather than kamikaze the entire playoff run simply out of spite. That's a great word to use, spite. That's what it is, and that's what it would be, and that's silly, because the alternative is you're competitive. You're watching games that matter. You want to see them go out there and give it everything they have, and what it results in, it results in. And keep in mind, when I talk about this, I'm talking about it generally, not so much, like, oh, in this crazy scenario with the COVID-19, end of the season, this and that. I get it. That's a huge part of what this season's going to be. But I'm just talking generally when it comes to where the Sixers are and Brett Brown and what they get to. I'm not talking specifically diving into all these crazy situations that may occur, because I think on Thursday, actually, you're going to have Adam Silver speak, and they're going to come up with this plan, and it seems like that 22-team format is what has been proposed in Orlando. So we'll get more details, but this is just more of a general conversation. We want to see them go as far as possible. Very true. If Brett Brown competes but doesn't win a championship or make it there, he won't come back unless we lose a tough 7-game series in the Eastern Conference Finals on the road. That's interesting. I wonder if 6 games would get him in the Eastern Conference Finals would keep him here. 5 games even. I don't know. If it's a 5-game series in the Eastern Conference Final and it looks bad, I don't know. It would be a tough decision, no doubt. It's funny how I put that in the positives, though, because that's the type of remarks that I was getting. I was essentially putting it in the positives because he mentioned there's a chance for Brett Brown to stay, which I would say is the case. I mean, if we know how this front office works, if we know how Elton Brand works and Joshua Harris, it's not as if Brett Brown is going to get canned instantly. I do think Elton Brand has some balls, though, if he's willing to make that type of decision. But him and Brett are close. I mean, there is a relationship there. Once again, when it comes to Brett Brown with me, I totally understand moving on. I would be naive to think that it's some obnoxiously ridiculous thing to move on from a coach after his tenure and after what we saw this year. I'm here to defend him to the point of saying he's not a bum. He's not a disgrace. He's not the worst coach in the world. Is he the right coach for this team right now, where they're at? I don't know. Only time will tell. But the reason why the team hasn't succeeded the way that it should is because of, well, one, you got some tough fit going on with Al Horford. That didn't work as planned, so very tough fit. And everyone who claims that it's a tough fit just assumes that any coach would come in and be able to figure it out so easily, and Brett's missing something so obnoxious. Did it take him a while to put him on the bench, Al Horford? Yeah, it did. You know why? Because that contract's so big, you don't pay someone that much money to come off the bench. So you try and make it work for as long as possible. And then when you realize, all right, listen, it's just not going to work with those three, because it works with Embiid and Al Horford. It doesn't work with Ben, Joel Embiid, and Al Horford. So with those three, it's not going to work. All right, maybe we'll utilize how to space this thing out. And things started to look better when he had Tobias at the 4, and things changed a bit. But the fit is brutal, and because your two stars are not taking the necessary jumps to go from second-round team to more of a conference final team. And that's on them. So there you have it. Once again, this episode of Sports Talk with Broads is sponsored by Orbit Energy and Power. They set the standard for clean energy, so whether you are looking to add solar to your home or company, Orbit works directly with you to ensure that you are getting the best deal. That's not all. They also provide water purification systems, backup energy services, battery storage, and more. So visit them online at orbitenergy.us or give them a call at 800-836-3987. So I would love to hear your comments down below. I'm expecting the Brett Brown slander. And if you're listening to this on YouTube, you can comment down below. If you're listening to this on a podcasting platform, you can use the review system as a place to comment. I truly enjoy reading those as well. So I would love to hear your thoughts. Can't wait to see the Brett slander. Interested to see the support, and it doesn't have to be an obnoxious amount of support. So here's the thing. It's very similar to this MLB owner thing and the players concept. If you lean owners on some situations throughout these contract negotiations, that means you're anti-player and you're pro-owners. Well, with this, if I support Brett to a level, that doesn't mean everything Brett ever does is 100% correct, or he's the most elite head coach of all time. Just giving him a little bit of support and said he's better than what people say he is, and the emotion comes out, that passionate fan reaction where you're just so disgusted, you blame it on him, but you're giving players a free pass, and you claim that it's the coach's problem when these players don't take that next step, where I would agree with you in other levels of basketball. I don't agree with that at all in the NBA, because that's just not how it works. Thank you guys so much for listening, and I will see you next time.